The program this morning provides a unique opportunity to hear some true accounts and insights regarding the development and formation of the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, a forerunner of the CIA. Despite strong opposition from the Army, Navy, FBI, and the State Department, America's first attempt at organized, full-scale espionage began in mid-1941. It would become a major factor in winning World War II. If we need any moral support or ethical foundation to justify entering into spying activities, we need only to turn to the Bible, where we read in Numbers 13th chapter, and I quote, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Go up into the mountains, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwelleth therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds." Numbers 13th chapter. Now let us... More than 4,000 Americans were dead or wounded by Japanese bombs and by explosions aboard stricken ships. The U.S. Navy alone lost more men during the 2-hour attack on December 7th, 1941, than it had yielded to its enemies in 2 previous wars. Before the first day of America's active involvement in World War II had ended, the U.S. had lost 2/3 of all its aircraft in the Pacific and its air superiority. The mighty Pacific Fleet, the pride of the U.S. Navy, had been all but smashed in one fell swoop in an attack made possible by the enemy's own naval force. These successfully bombed targets had been plotted and identified by a Japanese espionage ring that had been carefully infiltrated into Pearl Harbor over a long period of time. Now, an ancient Chinese sage once observed that an army without secret agents is exactly like a man without eyes or ears. The same holds true today for all nations as well as their respective armed forces. It took the OSS experience of World War II to alert the U.S. to the fact that sharp eyes and ears will go far to ensure national survival in this dangerous age. Pleasure to introduce our speaker for this morning, who attends All Souls regularly. Rene Defourneaux was born in France and immigrated to the United States in 1939. He joined the U.S. Army in 1943, and a year later parachuted behind German lines in France as an OSS agent. He returned to the USA in October of 1944 and was transferred to the CIB, that's the China-Burma-India Theater, in January of 1945. Rene parachuted behind Japanese lines in North Vietnam. He trained the Indo-Chinese resistance units under the control of Giap and Ho Chi Minh. After the war, there was a short period of civilian life. Then he was recalled to the Army, eventually assigned to the CIC, the U.S. Army in Germany, and later the CIC school at Fort Holabird. Rene was then transferred to the Far East Station in Okinawa and in Japan from 1956 to 1963. His last station as agent in charge of Counterintelligence Corps was in the Indianapolis Field Office. He retired in February 1965 after 22 years in the U.S. Army. In recent years, he has headed the Mid-America International Corporation, an export-import company. Currently, he is a consultant for international business. Mr. Defourneaux's topic this morning is War and Remembrance. War and Remembrance, Part 1.
A lot of ammunition, a lot of supply, and money. The night I took off, they drove me up to north of London in a little air base, and there I met the pilot, the co-pilot, the navigator, all young kids like me. They were all in their 20s. And they informed me that was the 29th mission. After this one, they're going home. Good. How many did you met? 29? Yeah, we know the place. We know the place like a palm of our hand. Don't worry about it. And the guy who escorted me, the Army Major, says, Rene, I hope you understand this is the only thing we can really give you is give me a little flask of good whiskey, which was hard to get in those days. I say, oh, thanks. You know, this is to give you a little courage, he says. You know, he says, it was really nice knowing you. He said, you know, I've taken many of you guys to the airport. I never saw one coming back yet. I said, well, this is nice. You know, he's telling me this before I leave, you know. Anyway, we were flying a B-24, painted black, so with non-reflective paint, ready to go. I got aboard. I sit down. The windows that would normally have a machine gun were blocked with plexiglass. The only weapon we had aboard was a tail gun, and the entire plane was loaded not with bomb, but with containers, huge containers that would be dropped at the same time I was. I was supposed to leave the plane by a hole right behind the bomb bay, and the rest was after me. A few other packages were loose there, so the dispatcher will drop this after me. So I was sitting in one of those, and I had the intercom phone in my ears when I hear somebody, I thought the pilot would say, pass the flask forward, pass the flask. So I didn't know what he was talking about, and the dispatcher said, you know, the flask, the booze, the whiskey. So right in the center of the plane was a slide where they used to go up to the cockpit, so my flask was on the slide, a push, and that's the last I saw of my booze. That thing that was supposed to give me courage to jump. We proceeded, we flew for 2 hours, we went over Brest, and they were bombing the town. We could see the flash and the explosion. We could see the Germans trying to locate us with their searchlight. They never did. The anti-aircraft was all over us, and our plane, we could tell they knew what they were doing because they were zigzagging. Finally, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the noise says, are you ready? We are close to the landing zone, to the drop zone. And I've been looking over what we were going as best as I could because it was kind of dark, but you could see the configuration of the ground. And I didn't recognize any of it. I say, you sure the right place? Oh, don't worry about it. We're in the right place. We've been here so many times, we know exactly where to go. I kept looking and I kept shaking my head. Finally, the green light, I jumped. It seems that I went off a 20-foot wall. I couldn't understand how quick I came down from that airplane and hit the ground. It was unbelievable. And I could hear a third of the stuff falling down, boom, boom, you know, of the containers all around me. And in the shadow, I could see, as I was rolling my parachute, I could see a stake or a post, just like a pencil, another one there, and another one. And I said, boy, it's a good thing I missed that one. I fell just between two. Because, boy, those things were sharp. Anyway, the plane left, perfect silence, nothing. Where's the reception party? I was supposed to wait for me. I waited about 10 minutes. Finally, in the distance, I hear voices, people talking. I paid close attention, trying to figure out who they were. I didn't understand the language. It wasn't German. I knew enough German. It wasn't French. What kind of language it was? And pretty soon I see two shadows approaching me. And when they got close enough, I realized what they were. They had eyes like this. I said, my God, they're Chinese. They dropped me in the wrong continent. Boy, I knew I was the wrong place. Then they kept talking about container, and they called me a container alive. vivant, container vivant, you know. So I said, well, where is your leader? You know, that's the only thing I could say to them. Take me to your leader. So I grabbed the chute, grabbed the stuff, and in the field we start walking all over a quarter of a mile. Finally, under the tree, we reached a huge oak tree, and underneath was a French officer dressed in full uniform of light blue of the French colonial troops. And he says to me, who are you? What are you doing here? I say, where am I? He said, you are in such a place. I said, well, I was supposed to go there. He said, oh, like 40 miles away. He says, well, how come I got over here? He said, well, we were just an operation against the German, and we heard a plane, so we just flashed our flight, you know. And our pilot thought it was the drop zone. That was the mistake. You know, the last mission was they wanted to do it quick and get back home. That was my impression. But anyway, here I am, approximately 40 miles from my destination. Nobody knew anything. I didn't know anybody. The best thing I could think of, well, as long as I'm here, I might as well use my talent and organize these guys. And what I saw there was not pretty. And I must say one thing, that's a good thing we won the war, because there was a lot of stuff that was going on then that was not very nice. And the Germans would have loved to have their own trial. The French dislike each other tremendously, especially if they collaborated with the German. And in the camp where we were in the woods, they had two women who had been shaved, tied to a tree, and they had burned their legs with compositions with the plastic. It did not explode, but it burned very hot. And I could see maggots in their legs, and I say, what's going on? What is this? He says, well, these girls slept with German soldiers, and they deserved that. I said, oh, come on now. You mean just for that? He says, yes, sir, boy, that's it. Boy, anybody who collaborated, they'll have it. Eventually, they killed the two girls. Why they did it, I do not know. I think a lot of it was getting even for some other reason, but I was not very happy. Until one day a doctor came in who was with us, and he said, by the way, I attended a meeting in a town about 40 miles away, and there was a guy with a description of the guy you had given us, and maybe that's it. I said, can we contact these people and determine? He said, yes, we'll do that. And sure enough, it was, in fact, the people who were supposed to have me there. So, loading the car with charcoal, we had no gasoline, we proceeded using back roads to where the rendezvous point. When I got to my destination, the first thing they did was arrest me. Even though I had about $250,000 worth in francs around my belt, they arrest me, and I couldn't understand why. At first, you know, I said, why do you arrest me? I look at it, I am who I am. I say, well, we don't know. What did happen is that the pilot reported that I had dropped okay, everything was fine. My reception party said they had never seen me, I never showed up. So Rene was in between. So they had to make sure that, because the German did it occasionally, if I had been captured and someone had taken my place, they would make sure that I was the right one. For about 2 or 3 days, communication between London and our base to determine if I was the real McCoy. And they would ask me all kinds of questions. And it was very difficult for me to answer because I had been taught to lie. And I didn't know if I should tell the truth or if I should lie or what I should do. So finally, they realized I was the real McCoy. So they said, all right, you're okay. They got me off the pigsty, and I became their link between London and their group, plus several groups. What did we do over there? Primarily, what we did primarily was to disrupt the lines of communication of the German. We used various methods. We didn't kill any German, really. That I know. We probably caused the death of several Germans, but we did not actually kill. I don't know having killed anybody, really. The first thing I did when I landed is throw my gun away, because I knew if I was caught with a gun, I don't care how good of a liar I was, I don't think they would have believed me, because I was a dead giveaway if you had a weapon. So I threw with a gun. And I decided that I was going to blend, and that was not going to be anything but a Frenchman who lived there. because of my age, I was rather young, I had to find an excuse to tell the French people who I was, what I was doing. They, you know, they believed me, maybe. But the German found out that I was there because among the people that I was in contact with was fifth columnists, or people who were working for the German. I never slept twice in the same place, and our sleeping quarters vary from from in the woods, from in the ditch, to farmhouses, to sometimes we were lucky sleeping with home. I found myself in bed one day with 3 girls in a huge bed, and they were the girls of the guy who was putting us in, you know, and believe me, we were sleepy. We just wanted to be nice and quiet anyway. And so we constantly move, I constantly move, never stay in the same place, and we only had one casualty, and the casualty was caused by his stupidity, not because of no other reason. Anyway, what we did, we ambushed columns. We'd be waiting for the German. When they were driving with their convoy, we'd hit them and then took off. That's all we did. This was difficult and very bad for the population, because usually if we did this too often, the local people would suffer, because the German would just grab a bunch of people, line them up against the wall and say, okay, the next time it happened, we kill. And they did kill a lot of people, innocent people. You know, anybody in the street, they will pick him up and kill him. They killed quite a few in the town in the area we were operating. The most interesting thing, I think, that I came across, which was how am I doing in time? Okay. Huh? Okay. I had one day things were doing quite well. A fellow came in wearing a leather suit, mind you, and he came to us. He says, I'm Father Norak. I was sent by my order to be your chaplain. We needed a chaplain like a hole in the head, you know. So I said to him, Father, that's great. Can you prove all this? And he did prove all this. So he said, well, what do you want to do? So first he says, well, I'm here for your spiritual well-being. I said, okay, we need this too. So he lived with us, and he would say his mass in the woods on the piece of wood. You know, he would bring his chalice, and at first nobody was there. He was all by himself. And pretty soon we decided that, by golly, if the guy can do this, we might as well go attend and help him. But I learned later on that not only he was a priest, but he was a French officer, reserve officer, who had spent 6 years in Foreign Legion. He was also, he had I don't know, 3 years at the Sorbonne as a medical student. So he had all kinds of talent, and he was a tactician. That guy had a way of planning things that was amazing. And one day we were waiting for a drop, and we were sitting in the dark. You know, I said, Father, don't you feel bad to do what you're doing? He says, because he used to go out fighting, you know, with the rest of us. You know. I said, don't you feel bad about killing German? He says, oh, this is. I give him the absolution with one hand and put him out with the other. No problem. You know, they're going to heaven, he says, don't worry. A great guy, fantastic guy. He ended up in the Vatican, and he died about three or 4 years ago. He died. And I had a chance to meet him again. Okay, so you see, little by little, they transformed me from a very peaceful guy, a very quiet fellow who now fought, into a guy who was ready to kill anybody. Believe me, in those days, if I had a chance, I would have killed somebody. And of course, lying was my second name. You know, I had to lie constantly. And it's very difficult for people to understand, once you start doing this, how difficult it is to come back and be normal again. But fortunately for me, this did not affect me at all. I wouldn't tell a lie now if my life depended on it. I feel pretty safe. I will stay after this a few minutes to, if anybody has any questions, so they can ask me. The mission I was on was terminated in approximately November, and I was on my way back when the bulge occurred. I was on the Queen Mary on the way back to the United States when the bulge, or the Battle of the Bulge, occurred. What did we accomplish? Some people said very little, some people say a lot. We captured about 25,000 prisoners. This made the French very unhappy because we decided that since the French was good, they were very good shots, they may want to kill those Germans, and they planned to kill a lot of Germans once their weapons had been taken away. So we let them carry their weapon up to the concentration, the area we had selected for their concentration. So the French never forgive us for this, you know. The people I was with, some of them were great, some of them were not so great, some of them were terrible. My organization actually was penetrated by communist groups who would steal. They would steal my code. They would go out and attract the plane that was supposed to come to supply me other areas. They would kill some people and have... You're close enough.
You cannot hear? Oh, you can hear now, huh? Good. Better system, yes. Now, I had all kinds of very sophisticated gadgets. For example, in order to avoid a repetition of what had happened to me, you know, I was dropped in the wrong place. The reception party would have the rudiment of a radar called Rebecca and Eureka. I had the Eureka, which was a small radar outfit about that big with an antenna, and the plane was equipped with a receptor, and when I knew they were coming, I would broadcast a signal, and they would aim to my signal and go right, and when they were exactly over my head, they just release everything and never miss. That was foolproof. In addition to that, we had what we call an S-phone. The S-phone was a telephone system, radio telephone system, that was hooked on the intercom of an airplane and could be we could be in communication within 9 miles. If the plane was 9 miles away, I could hear them and they could hear me. I could hear them, they could hear me, providing they were listening. I tell you what had happened to me once. We were waiting for a shipment, and we hear the plane in the distance. Then I start sending my code number. Say, I used to say, this is so-and-so, blah, 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 to so-and-so, so on and so forth. And I heard him talk, but they didn't hear me. And I hear them, pilot to navigator, do you see any light down there? Do you hear anything? No. I say, well, gee, what those guys are, you know. And I could understand what they were saying. What they're doing, you know. And 2 minutes later, do you see anything? No. Oh, what the heck, let's drop the stuff any place. Oh, boy, that used to burn me up, because if we did not pick up everything, you know, the Germans used to patrol the area, and if they see anything that was not normal in the area, what they would do is search everybody, arrest everybody, and do all kinds of nonsense like this. So everything had to be very tightly controlled. When the plane came in, the stuff would drop. I had a crew that would dig holes, empty the container, bury the container, the parachute and everything, cover the place, and then incidentally, the German had dogs, but we found out one way to keep the dogs from digging. You won't believe how easy it was. Urinate. You urinate, a dog will never dig where you urinate. That was easy, except sometimes nobody had to go. Look at volunteer, somebody to... it was really amazing how they... So the communication, how did I know? I would send my order by radio. I had 2 radio operators, and we did not send more than about 10 or 15 minutes each one. If I had a long message, I would break it up into unit. I have this operator from here would send part of the message. This one will listen, take over, send. So when the German were use a DF to determine where the location was, they will be lost. You see. So I would communicate, place my order, and then they would tell me, okay, we don't know exactly because the weather, there was a multitude of factors that intervened there. They say, okay, when your code signal comes in, we will tell you that it's coming and the number and so on and so forth. My code was the giraffe. And the number of plane coming was determined by the number of monkey that would climb on the giraffe, that would climb the giraffe. So they say, tonight the messages will come and say, the giraffe, 5 monkeys will jump on the giraffe, will climb the giraffe, or 3 monkeys will. Then I knew that was me. The moment I heard the monkeys and the giraffe, I was me. Then I knew that night I better be ready to accept 1, 2, 3, whatever plane. That's how we communicated. That is what they wanted. The BBC was supposed to indicate on their broadcasting. That was, yes.
I know it's a little extraneous. Was it true that actually no Germans were successful in spying in England during World War II?
That's not true.
There were successful.
Yes. They penetrated our group. I'll tell you this. Now I can tell you this because I don't think the British were worried one way or the other. But a man was sent to us from France, and we discovered that he was a German agent. He went to the entire training, and the guy, when he left, like me, was probably very happy to go back and mission accomplished. Except when they drop him between France and England instead of France. You see, they drop him in the water. The British were very, very, very realistic. For example, there was a lot of torture going on by the French against the German. We had a bunch of prisoners, German prisoners, and they used to walk them in minefield, which is against, you just don't do this, even with prisoners. They used to beat them. Oh, they used to go and have a few drinks. The French would drink and get drunk and say, let's go and beat some German. And those poor Germans, they were prisoners, and just piling a bloody mess, And I reported all this. And the British sent one of their officers to come, Captain Wilson, to investigate. And what I told him was true. He discovered the same thing, and he got the French together. He said, listen, you guys, you're not doing the right thing. I said, I'll tell you one thing, since you have started, you better finish it right. You better have none of those prisoners return to Germany. I said, that's my recommendation. None of them returned to Germany alive, except one. And that guy was a captain of a sea captain of a submarine, who was on leave when this happened. He was on leave when they landed, and he was stuck somewhere in France, and he was trying to make his way back, and he got caught. A very nice fellow, but he was smart, and he escaped. And we were worried that he would come up because he knew what was going on. He never opened his mouth because actually he was very bitterly anti-Hitler, I thought. Talking to him, he was not at all pro-German. He was a German, but not Hitler. Yes.
You mentioned that even though you had been trained to lie and kill and that kind of thing, that you didn't have much of a problem integrating yourself back to some
No.
Did either the American government or the British government have a program to reverse your training, or were you pretty much left to do that?
Oh, you're on your own. We were on your own. No, there was no training to learn how to not to lie. No, they invented a machine called polygraph. Instead, that was that they used to make sure you didn't lie anymore. Well, you want my own opinion? No, I don't think so. Because we had good people, bad people. The way, if you assess your people properly, you will know ahead of time before you give them a job how they will behave when they come out. Very few people who are well trained and were well selected cause trouble. The one who cause trouble is the one who are poorly trained and poorly assessed before they go in. Oh, the British had a fantastic assessment program. Yes, and by the way, incidentally, 29 of us were picked up, and by the British, by the U.S. 9 were accepted by the British. 20 were returned to the U.S. And the U.S. said, we're going to use these guys. The casualties of that group were so great that I think 90% of them were killed or something happened to them. But all of us, all 9 of us, came back. Incidentally, I was back in England last year and was trying to trace the history of our unit. There is not a single word about what I did. They know that who I was, but the mission is completely, they claim that everything was given to the U.S. And the U.S., when I asked the U.S., says, no, the British have everything. So they still don't want to talk about it. Huh? I was training, at 3 or 4 areas, near Southampton, one place, near Bristol, I don't remember the name, near Bath. We had a place near Bath, England, and Scotland. Scotland I liked the best. Scotland was really, we lived in an old medieval castle, and we learned how to climb by going to the room from the outside.
Did they send you back in the same area of France? That you
No. Excuse me, no, they never sent people where they originated. No, it was, they ought to be recognized, no. I was sent right in the center of France, south of Orléans. Are you familiar with France? The Loire River goes from west, east, then south. Well, I was in a part that goes south between Nevers and Gien, southeast of Orléans. Huh? No, it's one in the Nièvre. The area is called the Nièvre. This is a famous country for wine and for everything, for food and wine and cheese. Now I'll tell you a story that I didn't even know. I found out last year that they had a nickname for me. The people I was with knew I was an American. They couldn't understand how an American could speak French so well, But anyway, so my nickname was McCormick, because in France the only American word they knew was McCormick, because the agricultural machine was all made by McCormick. So my name was McCormick. So and then when I met these guys, the first thing, once they realized who I was, they say, well, what would you like to eat? So I said, me? Oh, I want a steak and some milk. And they look at me, this steak and milk. So this story I didn't remember this, but this guy who was the head, by the way, the head of the resistance group is coming on the 12th this month. He never been to America, and he's going to come. He and his wife are coming here. Well, anyway, so one day we were on the bicycle, and it was hot. It was in August. It was really hot. And I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but we stopped in one place, and we said, okay, let's eat something. And I asked my traditional steak and milk. We don't have any steak. We don't have any milk, but we have one of the nicest little wine you have ever tasted. So I had wine. We drink wine. That was the last time I asked for milk. This is the story that is told in France. The last time I ever asked for milk after I tasted their wine. Now last year I was back, and I went to the village where I blew the bridge, beautiful bridge across the Loire River. We just blew the thing to Kingdom Come, bam. And everybody thanked me. Said, oh, that was fun. We got a new bridge now. That old thing was no good anyway. So they gave me a medal for blowing 44 years later.
After all these years, are you allowed to tell anything, or are there still things that are classified and you're still sworn to?
There are certain things that I cannot, but this is, the stuff that I cannot tell is more recent than that. The war things, so many things has been written. But I was trying to find out exactly what was the outcome of my mission, and because they told us very little in case we were captured. I didn't know anybody. I couldn't reveal the name. I couldn't reveal the name of places because they wouldn't tell us. See, we were always kept in the dark for the very reason. If you don't know, you cannot tell, you know. But the more you know, the more you can tell, and the more they can figure it out. Now, if some of you are interested in OSS, this was written by Edward Wymoff, and it's a rather accurate, but not complete, book on OSS, and it has some interesting story in it. There were more, actually, there's more failure than success, because you never, in intelligence, very seldom do you know you can attribute success to your effort. But believe me, you can really know your failure. Boy. And everybody knows your failure. This is the problem. See? Because your success, you don't want to tip anybody off. You don't want to tell them, oh, well, you know, we know how to do this. Or we did this. We don't say anything. You want to know about a CIA? I don't know a thing about CIA. I never heard this, but I'll tell you one thing about General Patton. When Patton was running across France, north of my territory, and I took orders directly from SHAPE headquarters. In other words, Eisenhower, who incidentally gave me my commission in London. I was commissioned by Eisenhower, field commission. Anyway, my mission was to protect the American army going across France and keep those 2 or 3 German divisions from going up. So, blowing bridges, destroying communication, all this was my mission. Patton wasn't told that. Patton had his own idea about things. So, he sent a couple of his officers across the line in my territory and started telling the French people, blow this, do this, do that. And I was better equipped to handle the situation than they were because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know we had agents on the other side of the river. They didn't know we were doing things. So my job was to either slow down or stop them or try to convince them not to do it. Well, we had some really heated argument because those didn't say I was never in uniform. I was always in civilian clothes. They couldn't understand how this Frenchman was giving him so much hard time, you know. So when they went back, they told Patton, they said, there's a character over there that is really something, boy. We can't do a thing. He won't let us do anything. He says, who is this guy? He said, what can't you find out? Well, he claims that he is under direct General Koenig and Eisen. I said, oh, he is, huh? Okay. I didn't know this. You see, I learned this when I returned. I returned back to my base. The first thing I'm told is, what the heck did you do to Patton? He's looking for you. And boy, when he finds you, wow, boy, I hate to think what's going to happen to you. I said, well, I didn't do anything. He says, well, what does he want to know about you? He's asked who you were and how can he find out? I said, did you tell him? I said, no, we didn't say anything. We didn't tell him, but apparently he got very upset that someone, you know, took the attitude that he was not the big boss. Someone else was higher than he was, and he was very upset. But this is my activity with Patton, or my encounter with Patton.
Rene, did you have pretty good two-way communications with SHAPE or with
Which, yeah.
or were you left pretty much to, what I'm thinking is, who gave you targets? Were you did your own targets?
No. No. This is one of the reasons why I was there. Up to then, you know, the French used to pick up their own target, which sometimes was their own. I was there to coordinate the efforts of the war, the Allied effort with the. That was one of the big problems when you have a resistance group like this, is that they would do they lose cannon, you know, they do stupid things sometimes. And my job was to slow down or direct their effort properly, see. very close. Yes.
About troop movements and bridges and things like that.
Yes.
Back to England
Yes.
and receiving instruction.
Yes.
from Meredith.
Yes. Except the lines of communication were not always very good because, for example, they didn't tell the Air Force that we were operating in a certain area, and the Air Force used to draw a line across the map and say, anything that moves here, boom, hit it, fair game. And sometimes that was me. I got hit more by our own Air Force than the German. The German left us alone, but boy, our own Air Force, boy, every time we couldn't do anything because we would be waiting for something and they would see us, and start hitting us thinking we were German. Because of a lack of communication between the main headquarters, you see. I had to do more. I had to apologize more to the French. You won't believe this, but a little town about approximately 30 miles from where I was completely wiped out. They were bombing an air base, German air base, that was about 60 miles away. The meteorology, the weather guys give them the wrong information. Apparently the wind was, and they wipe out an entire village in about 30 seconds. Half the population was dead. I mean, just dead. The other half was, and I had to go and tell these people, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. But to this day, and I was there last year in a village, the French are convinced that we did it deliberately because there was a little factory making. I beg your pardon? Oh, yeah, we spent it all. That was all, by the way, that money was all fake money. It was, we used to make French money like, All the German did it, so we did the same thing, see? Except we did better job. Oh, the Battle of Fort Harrison. Thank you very much. I better go.